This afternoon we're going to turn our attention from the very small individual particles of the universe, namely the quanta that we talked about yesterday afternoon and this morning with Anton Zeilinger. We'll be turning our attention to the largest features of the universe, right? From the atom to the cosmos. And we're going to be telling that story of the cosmos. George Greenstein, who's a colleague of mine at Amherst College, who you know from 1997 meeting when he was here also with you and presenting on similar themes. We're going to be coming back to those themes because they seem to pose such important questions and issues, specifically around the beginnings of the universe, the questions of beginnings in Buddhist cosmology, and the differences that we often find between Buddhist cosmology and Western thinking concerning the origins of the universe. So what we're going to do then is to invite George to tell his story, to raise some of the large questions that we experience at the hand of that story, that we discover at the hand of that story. Then, following that summary, we'll then turn to Mathieu Ricard, and he'll give a short précis of observations from the Buddhist side concerning, again, the same theme. And then we'll open the discussion and invite Your Holiness as well to speak concerning these large questions. So, without further ado, then, George, we're in your hands.
Thank you. Anton Zeilinger yesterday began his talk and peppered his talk at many points by reference to the great thinkers who had influenced his thinking. Little quotations from Bohr and Einstein and Mach, and I would like to begin my talk with a quotation from somebody who has influenced my thinking, namely Anton. Anton began by saying, "I want to know why the world is so strange. I need new concepts. The old concepts that we have simply don't allow us to understand the quantum. And perhaps these concepts will come from this collision between two different cultures." I wrote that down. And I feel the same way about the question of the origin. The two ways of thought being the scientific way and the Buddhist way. When thinking about the origin of the universe, we have a lot of facts that we know, but they lead us to a gigantic question, which is a scientific question, but it was also a question that takes us beyond how I know how to think. And I think it's a question that takes all scientists beyond how they know how to think. So what we need is a new way to think. So perhaps out of this conversation, some new way to think will emerge. So I thought I'd begin just by describing what we know about the origin of the universe. It's completely not well understood. The origin of the universe is not well understood. I don't understand. There it is. It's not well understood. But we have evidence. And we have several kinds of evidence. One piece of evidence is we have evidence that the universe is expanding. And the second piece of evidence that I'm emphasizing right here is that the universe was once compact and hot. A little background. When you go out at night and look at the sky, everything that you see is contained in our galaxy. This is a picture, a photograph through an astronomical telescope of a galaxy. A galaxy's all stars, all moons, all planets, all comets, everything we could see with the naked eye, and more than that, is a member of our own galaxy. There are other galaxies. Galaxies are extremely large. They are 100,000. There are something like 100 billion stars contained in a galaxy. A galaxy is around 100,000 light years across. That means it takes a ray of light 100,000 years to cross a galaxy. For comparison, it takes light year. For comparison, it takes a ray of light a tiny fraction of a second to circle around the Earth. It takes around 1 second to go to the moon. It takes around 8 minutes to go to the sun. but 100,000 years to cross from one end to another of our galaxy. And as you can see, these galaxies, the stars seem to be organized in these very pretty spiral patterns. So what I'm talking about is galaxies. Galaxies seem to be the fundamental unit that we are speaking about when we're speaking of the expansion of the universe.
나보다 외로 second check. 좋아. 그렇지. second check로 맞아.
second check.
이모부터 이제 까맣게. 이모부터 까맣게. 시즌 까맣게 해서 second 가져왔다. second true. 예, 10 세상 니들 좀 미쳐나고 사고.
Okay.
Okay, yes.
Good. This picture here, it looks like little smudges of light, but actually each of these smudges of light is a galaxy. Each of these tiny little smudges is 100 billion stars. Each of those smudges is 100,000 light years across. And as you can see, there's a lot of smudges in this picture. There are many billions of galaxies that we know of. In 1935, Edwin Hubble discovered that galaxies are all moving away from each other. Every galaxy is moving away from every other galaxy. If they had been moving at a steady rate, we can calculate how long ago they were closer together. And the answer is 15 billion years ago. 15 billion years ago, the galaxies were all jammed together if they've been moving steadily. So that's one piece of evidence, namely that 15 billion years ago, all the matter in the universe was very close together. That rests on a hypothesis that the motion has been steady. And here we have two observational checks. Here we have two more pieces of evidence that this general picture is correct. We have two pieces of evidence that the universe used to be extremely dense, compacted, but also that it was very hot. The first piece of evidence is the remnant of the heat radiation from the hot, compressed universe. Anything that is hot emits light. A flame emits light because it is hot. These lights up here emit light because they are hot. And if the universe had been hot, then it would have emitted light. And we've detected that light. That light still exists. It's been detected. A very faint glow filling the entire universe, which is the remnant of the superheated state of the universe. And that light was emitted around 10,000 years after the Big Bang. The Big Bang was this original state of extreme compression. So that light is evidence. The fact that we have detected that light is evidence that we understand all the way back in time till around 100,000 years after the Big Bang. Our general ideas seem to be correct. They are confirmed by observation starting around 100,000 years after the Big Bang. We also have evidence, a different kind of evidence, that we understand what the universe was like 10 minutes after the Big Bang. And this comes from the fact that 10 minutes after the Big Bang, the universe was so hot that nuclear reactions took place. And these nuclear reactions created certain of the chemical elements. And they created, and we can, if our ideas are correct, we can predict how many of these chemical elements were created. And then when we go out and observe the universe, that's exactly how many chemical elements we find. This evidence specifically refers to the one single element, helium. Helium seems to have been created during the first 10 minutes of the Big Bang. So these three pieces of evidence, first that the universe is expanding now, second,
Big Bang Big Bang
But you mentioned that the helium exists after 10 minutes after the Big Bang. But Big Bang itself, isn't it? It's an explosion.
Immense heat.
Immense heat. Wouldn't you say there is an immense heat there?
Immense heat and very highly compressed.
So the helium doesn't exist at that time.
It was created at that time.
Yeah, it was created.
At 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Prior to 10 minutes, there was no helium. After 10 minutes, it was created, not created, it was synthesized the way by reactions.
Yeah.
Did it?
Reaction.
자식도 주죠.
It was not creation out of nothing.
Right.
Yes. So 3 pieces of evidence, just to repeat. The universe is expanding now. In the past, it was very dense and very hot, and at 100,000 years ago, and at 10 minutes at 100,000 years after the Big Bang, we know it was very dense and very hot. At 10 minutes after the Big Bang, we know it was even denser and even hotter. These are the 3 pieces of evidence we have. But we also have a theory, and that theory is Einstein's theory of the Big Bang. This is part of his theory of relativity. Einstein's theory of relativity has been extensively tested experimentally, but this element of his theory has not been tested experimentally. So if we believe Einstein's... So what I'm going to tell you now is what Einstein's theory says about this hot compressed universe. It has not received too much experimental test, but here's the theory. The theory is Einstein's relativity, and the bottom part here is the important point. According to that theory, the expansion of the universe began in a state of infinite compression and infinite temperature.
차례가.
셀게 보나. 즉 뒤부처럼 거다. compression. 되다 아니 뒤 트웬이부터 셀게 봐.
Now we call that state the Big Bang. It doesn't mean anything, it's simply a phrase we use to describe it. Infinite compression, that means that all matter, every speck of matter that existed occupied exactly the same space, and there was no distance whatsoever between objects. The distance from one object to another was literally 0. Infinite temperature means that everything was moving with infinite energy, physical energy.
디스턴스가 맞어요. 말하는
그러다가 다 compression을 되다 상황 공부질 뒤대로 공부질 뒤대여서 고사 찍는 것마도 그 수진 그 탐제 공부질 뒤 그 유 고사 찍는 것마도 편준
내가 그 시중 계시가 그래.
지금
내 정해져 알아.
나는
그 시중 계시 알아 봐. 코레 사이즈도 계시야 알아 봐.
So can we speak about the size of this compression that causes the Big Bang?
The size of the space occupied by all matter. Is there a size or is it 0?
It is, the size is 0.
So you cannot really talk about the spatial location of this.
That's right. Mm-hmm. It is this infinity that's the hard part. But let me just keep going. So what caused the Big Bang? What came before the Big Bang?
Oh, that did it. Yes.
Was the Big Bang creation, or was it simply a stage in the evolution of the universe? Did the universe exist prior to the Big Bang and pass through this state and then come into the current state, or was the universe created at that instant? These are the questions. And the answer to the questions is we don't know. And I'm going to talk...
creation 전에 집어버리 지금 나올 리로를 줘래.
말이다.
균적 기어서 그거래.
So what do you mean by creation here?
I mean, prior to the Big Bang, there was nothing, and after the Big Bang, there was a lot.
그 균적 기어디 creation 그래.
So would you say something that is caused event is a creation? If you say that the universe comes from a cause, would that be considered a creation?
Micro expression.
I want to ask you that question. I came here to ask. Let me just continue, and then we can talk about this. Let me just continue with... there are a few more things we can say. The reason why we do not know how to answer this question is that we do not know how to deal with all matter occupying exactly the same space. Physics does not know how to describe it. And we also do not know how to deal with all matter having infinite energy. We know how to deal with matter occupying a small amount of space, but not zero. And we know how to deal with matter having a very high energy, but not infinity. And I don't think we're ever going to find out, because we are finite beings. But the reason why we don't know how to answer these questions is the infinity. And the infinity comes from Einstein's theory. But there are speculations. And we can all have whatever speculation we want, but here are some of the speculations within the framework of the Big Bang theory. One possibility is that before the Big Bang, the universe existed, but it was contracting, coming together, and boom, and went out, and we live in the out phase. There is nothing in Einstein's theory that says this would have happened, but there's also nothing in Einstein's theory that says it didn't happen. Einstein's theory has no way to deal with this, so we can say whatever we want. A second possibility...
다른데
그래 영감도 지대 나무 예비체.
너무 예쁘다. 또 시. 나래 엔티네 동백. 아 소리지.
디제비는 아인슈타인 그죠.
안상 그 뒤로 돈다 되어서요 말이야. 안상 뒤로 그 돈에 될 잡죠요 말이야. and 안상 그 뒤로 그 돈에 될 nø제게요 말이야. this is that kind of speculation around 마도.
Second possibility. The universe existed, it was contracting to this state of infinity, and at that instant all the laws of nature changed. And then it expanded outward again. There are some theories of physics that what we call the immutable laws of nature are actually not immutable, that they can change. The force of gravity suddenly changed. The charge on the electron suddenly changed. Things like that. A third possibility.
나래
틴슈드.
나래 되게 간다 요르데버지.
네.
간다지 줄메 그들한시 많이 봐.
A third possibility is that the universe existed and was contract.
What's the difference between the first and the second then?
In the first, the laws of physics did not change, and
Oh,
in the
okay.
second, the laws of physics did change.
Okay, that's the difference. Okay. 당보시 단체면은 laws of nature 되게 physics 되게 요만 로체. 그러네. 니버들이야 요만 로체. Okay.
A third possibility. The universe existed, contracted to a bounce, expanded, stopped, contracted to another bounce, and this way endlessly. An endless series of cycles. Like that. A fourth possibility, that nothing existed at all before the Big Bang. Nothing in the sense of, well, nothing existed. Now, if we raise that possibility within the context of physics, there's a whole series of enigmas.
Enigmas, labzu 간다. 대시자마도야. No.
For example, if we hypothesize that
대세로 시체 전에 잡다는 거야. 당부디 뭐래야 지금 여버체 대마시.
다르지.
수팀.
양파 잘.
근데 자외 지금 춘이기도 줄 좋아하잖아 매버체. 니버디 좋지. 얘네들 춘이들 좋은로. 수버들이야 다니 탑에 버르지. 양내 양도 파팀 수샤르 파팀 수샤르지. 다 시버들이야 아니 등을 그게 요 말했어. 얘네 다 시버들 라베나 아니 뭐가 그러면 나리야. 시대에 뭐지리야 다 시제만 되지. 가시 제기 그랬어.
The fourth possibility is that nothing existed prior to the Big Bang, and within the context of physics, there's a whole lot of questions about that. Here's one question. Do the laws of nature exist if nature doesn't exist? For example, Newton's theory of gravity, Newton's law of gravitational attraction, says that any two objects attract each other with a certain force. Was that true if there were no objects? Einstein says that the speed of light is constant. Was that true if there was no light? Thermodynamics says that energy is conserved. Was that true if there was no energy? Did time exist prior to the Big Bang? I don't happen to understand time, but what naive understanding I have of time is that it refers to the passage of events, but if there were no events, was there time? I also don't understand space, but it has to do with how far away I am from Arthur. But if I don't exist and Arthur doesn't exist and nothing else exists, then did space exist? So all of these speculations lead to the idea that if the Big Bang was creation, it was not just the creation of matter, it was the creation of laws and concepts of time and space, laws of physics. So if we really...
No. Can you define what you mean by concepts?
Laws of nature.
Laws of nature. Kind of concepts like the document. That depend to set them into to down to get in Kawashaku.
But I also mean time and space. If time did not exist, then why am I worried about what came before the Big Bang? Before has no meaning. And so now I would ask you to instruct me, because right here we completely run out of understanding. Now there is one technical possible solution to this problem, which is that all of this is based on Einstein's theory of relativity, and Einstein's theory of relativity does not include quantum mechanics. It does not include the insights of quantum mechanics. So everybody knows that we need another theory, a theory that includes quantum mechanics and the Big Bang theory. And perhaps if we could create that theory would say that the Big Bang was not infinitely dense and not infinitely hot, but only very dense and very hot. And that theory might tell us what came before the Big Bang. But people have known about this possibility for 75 years now, and no one has succeeded in creating that theory. So it may be that we're never going to succeed in creating that theory. So I don't think we should just wait until physicists come along with a new theory to start answering these questions. So here, all science has run out of understanding, and this is the current status of the question of the origin of the universe.
Thank you, George. So this is, in a very brief telling, the whole history of the universe. That was remarkable, George. I think that was 15 minutes. Now what we'd like to do is to take these questions, especially these last questions. Did time exist prior to all material existence? Did space exist? Were the laws by which the whole universe were constructed, were they antecedent or prior to the universe itself? Did this all come into existence? Does it make any sense to even speak about before and after if time doesn't exist and such things? These are unsolved mysteries. We'd like to ask Mathieu if he would not mind to speak a little bit to us concerning how the Buddhists understand, on the one hand, the origins of the universe or the beginnings of this story, but also we understand from your book and from other conversations we've had with you this whole question of beginning. George has emphasized, on the one hand, the Big Bang as an event. We simply don't know whether there was anything beyond that event. How do you address that question from your own perspectives?
Yeah, so no way accomplished scholar, so I will say a few words, but I would like my colleagues to complement on that. But basically, we have this feeling that it must have begun somewhere. We are ready to go 15 billion years back, but we say, no, it has to begin somewhere. And the Western mathematician and philosopher Bertrand Russell said, there's no logical problem with the notion of having no beginning. There's just a problem of imagination. We say it must be something before. Well, it must have begun at some point. So, but now what's the opposite? The opposite is to have nothing, otherwise, we have no beginning, and then go from nothing to something. So there, we perhaps have no problem of imagination. We say, oh, well, nothing can become something. But we certainly have logical problems. Ex nihilo sort of production or creation. So what is the nature, according to the Buddhist scriptures, of those logical problems? Well, for instance, in the...
지단 통모 요새들이야. 리베 제베제베나 버든 라슬기 통모 매발이야. 리베데 게베 늦었다요 말했어. 너희는 롤을 추가하고 싶지. 요레스. 얘네 다는데 다 통모 여바 시장 제베나 딜로를 줄대고 요래 리버든 게 그래서 다들 리버든 게 배는 주제디.
So now one of the greatest classic Buddhist philosophers, Shantideva, in the 9th chapter of his Way of the Bodhisattva, the wisdom chapter, said that a million causes cannot make nothing become something. So why is that? What is the reasoning behind that? Is that the process of becoming implies a kind of transformation. You have to leave a state to go to another state. Red becomes blue. It has to shed its redness to become blue. So now nothing, what does it has to abandon to become something? There's nothing to be transformed there. And if you think a little bit further, what is nothingness besides a concept? It's simply we imagine that there could be no phenomenal world. And purely in our mind, we say, well, if there was nothing, then if nothing of this would be there, there will be nothingness. But that's just a concept. The idea of the absence of the phenomenal world, which is a given phenomenon, a primary sort of, we have evidence of that there being a phenomenal world. So how simply the idea of the absence of phenomena be something that can become a cause of creating something? So that's one of the main arguments, is that nothingness is just a pure concept and it cannot become a cause of production. So that's one of the main, and also it would have to abandon its condition of nothingness, but nothingness has nothing to abandon, basically. So that's one of the logical reasoning. So then the other extreme is that there has to be, if we don't want to go to big absence of beginning, that there has to be a primal cause. So all the civilization that envisaging a creator or some kind of primary cause, no matter what names you give to that, say, okay, there was a cause which itself is without cause. Otherwise, then we'd need a further cause, and we go again back to beginninglessness, and which has in itself all the necessary cause to bring back the universe. It cannot have the need to get help from somewhere else. Otherwise, it's not the initial cause. Again, you go to a former cause and another cause, and then we're back to no beginning. So then what will be the characteristic of that cause? It does have to have all the causes and conditions to produce the universe, right? Now, what happens in such a case? Why something happens or does not happen? When something does not happen, it's because some causes and conditions are missing. If you try to make tea, if you have no fire, you can't boil the tea. When you have everything for something to happen, then it cannot not happen. Therefore, the logical reasoning, if that all the causes and conditions were present within this first cause, which has to be as a first cause, it would have to produce the whole universe all the time. Because otherwise it's missing something. It needs some other triggers, it's incomplete, whatever, it's not the initial cause. Or it cannot produce anything, because basically there's no change in that changeless, causeless cause. So those are the basic sort of logical reasoning on the one hand, to say that nothing is not something that can turn into existence, and that a primary cause, which has all the cause within itself, which is not itself not cause, either is completely static or has to produce the whole universe all the time.
What do you mean all the time? Over and over again?
Just at every moment, because it has all the causes and conditions for producing. Why should it stop?
It'll be instantaneous causation.
Which other...
Everything has to come into being instantaneously,
well,
because all the information are fully complete there.
The Big Bang was instantaneous.
Yeah, but not only once, because...
It have to be
okay, so over and over again.
What will stop it to do so? If it's a self-contained initial cause that have all the causes, which it must have.
Okay.
But it presumes that all the causes and conditions are present. I mean, making tea was the example you gave.
Well,
it required all the causes and conditions
Well,
to
if
be
it
present.
doesn't have, then where does it get it from?
Yes. So, but all of them had to be present. So then, would it be the same also for the universe? If you were missing, as it were, one of the elements, one of the causes and conditions,
It will never happen.
would never happen, or only until that causing condition?
Where will it get it
Where
from?
would it come from?
I see, because it's
Yeah.
part of the universe. So at every instant in time, somewhere there's a universe being created, is the idea. You were saying
No,
it's
no.
all the
It
time.
means
No,
that
no,
doesn't
no,
make
no.
any sense.
No, that's
the
this
only-
is an absurd,
It's
absurd conclusion.
it's a reductio absurdum approach.
So for the only thing that makes sense,
단규구역으로만
even it's hard to imagine,
규면을 깨우나
is that it's always
통맹
prior,
간다다 지단 지화부서로
prior set
쓰거나
of causes and
코란
conditions.
규면을 깨우 인자 규탐제 깨는 상황 코란 창고요 인자
So
This set of causes and conditions, are they matter? Are they energy?
well, that's not the main issue, but also
It is the main issue, because if they are matter and energy, then they're part of the universe.
yes. So anyway, no beginning means there's always been something before. No matter
Yeah.
the state of, there's only states of transformation.
Yes.
Nothing becomes from nothingness to something,
Yeah.
and something also will not go to nothingness. There's no such cause that can completely make something to become nothing.
Okay.
And actually, this same reasoning apply not to only to the universe, but to the BIP of your atom disintegration, because in a way, it's the same reasoning of X having no cause coming into existence, whether it's the Big Bang or a single particle. The reasoning is exactly the same. It's a kind of ex nihilo production if you say that an instant particle has no cause. And so I hope that Tubdenjimala will elaborate on the argument against causelessness. But one beautiful one is with something, including the universe or a single particle, doesn't need a cause to appear. Then what stops elephants from appearing in the sky? They don't need cause. So not just one particle, anything. The sky will be filled with elephants, with everything else. Because they don't need cause. So what's the problem with
규면을
that?
깨우나 나갈이야 만전 영적으로
Isn't it?
더 샤야 돼 그다 그 주구고 뭐
So then the whole history of, I think, the production of the universe and all that, the beautiful formation of galaxies, that's no any problem for, I think, Buddhist philosophy. One thing I would like to mention, however, is that the idea of our planet being the center of the universe, this anthropocentric, was never in the picture. From the sutras, they speak from the beginning of billion-fold universe. Ours being a small unit, 1,000 of those being a secondary unit, 1,000 of those secondary units being a tertiary unit. That means a billion-fold universe. They speak of universe being like curtains of lights, like horses spouting fires, wheels of lights, all these beautiful images that you seem to be already looking in the Hubble telescope. So, of course, it doesn't mean that there were somehow someone looking at that in some way, but still the idea that there was almost infinite possibilities, universes, and for beginninglessness also as another thing. There must have been life, there must have been consciousness in all those billion universes. So the problem also of this single localized, so in a way our Big Bang is a very, very small part of history from that perspective. And so in that sense, and also it solves another problem, the famous intelligent design. If it's always been there, what do we need for an intelligent design? And what do we need for the so-called fine-tuning of the constant of the universe to make it happen so that life could be there and we could be there to observe the beauty of the universe? It's not necessary, because it has always been together, so of course they cannot be mutually incompatible. So the fine-tuning is almost perfect. It has to be. So this is, I think, a few ideas, but I wish that you might comment on that.
I'd like to hear what His Holiness has to say. I don't really have anything to add in particular. I would say only that the one interesting point that might come up eventually would be the notion that causality requires change, as you pointed out, and that if something changes, then it changes by its very nature, which means that, at least on some Buddhist accounts, this means that all things are instantaneous, which would also be they only exist instantaneously. for a moment. They are all momentary. So this would be yet another argument against the notion that the Big Bang is an absolute beginning. But I don't want to go on there. I'd like to hear what His Holiness might have to say here.
I don't know.
Your Holiness,
대부분을 역사도.
may I pose a more leading question?
지사한다. 이제 토마 열었으면은 롤 샤도 열었지.
나래.
리뷰 더 야마레스.
나래.
이제 토마 열었으면은 롤 샤미도 열었지.
리포트 때문에.
또 들으셔. 되게 자도 잡죠. 셰샤게도.
So His Holiness says that he has 100% support for Matthew when he contrasts the problems, the concept, the imagination problem versus the logical problem with respect to beginning and beginninglessness. So the idea that we can imagine, it's easier for imagination when we say there is a beginning, but logically we have more problem. But it's harder to imagine when you say it's beginningless, but logically that seems to be more in tune with the reason.
다들 예. 그래서 이제 좀 말해. 응원동은 시슈즈 대지자와 미술쇼. 말해. 그죠? 이제 좀 말해. 맞다라 있다.
So here His Holiness was saying that he
지난
would,
사도 때문에 지난 토마 열었으면 대지자와 미술쇼 스테이션.
he would concord with Nagarjuna in his Precious Garland, where Nagarjuna says that when the Buddha was asked whether the universe, whether there is end to the beginning, the starting point to the universe, the Buddha did not respond. He remained silent. So
I follow that. I really don't know. That's it. Very interesting about that. Very difficult to make conclusion. Very difficult.
Well,
in any case, the present is present. It's really effect. So that's more important. And accordingly, future is important. The past, okay.
Well, here,
instead
Here's
it's
an
better to have a
example.
nice sleep.
if you want to lose a little sleep, here is one instance of the future, namely, if the current expansion of the universe turns into a contraction, then the question is, what is our future? Is our future that we simply pass out of existence in the second Big Bang, or somehow get transformed into a third Big Bang? This also, these mysteries refer to the future also. If the universe's expansion reverses into a contraction. Now, the technical evidence...
땅 아주 넘겨 안다다 조원롱 기고 내지 시대고 봐. 다 시주점 마도 조 아주 로리야다 조원롱 기서 50 지게 디간도 사줘서 시고 봐. 다 디고 왔습니다 봐. 그 롱기 단 네베 직다 가서 10대 아주 되게 그사 디프레션 가서 식도
Compression.
저 롱시에 뭐 어디 그런다. 조롱 요아래 조 매요아래 된데 차베타는 조 추구리 조 사이구리 양코 바다지 양코 소트 티바지 요초도 남고 베지 데리샤 남베시다 쳔디 툼브레
Yes. So
beginningless.
no. So to relate this story, that you told of the different options, that speculations that physicists have come up with, the Buddhist position seems to be much closer to the third option, where there is this constant, expansion and shrinking, and then coming into being again. This kind of repeated dissolution and the origination of the universe. And of course, in the text, this arising of a new universe is explained in terms of a process of the arising of the different elements. For example, like from the starting with the wind element, it may be more kind of metaphoric. But for example, like if we relate that to the idea of a compression, infinite, this initial state of total compression, that can be seen as a state of tremendous energy. So wind in the sense of energy, which then give rise to the kind of the future unfolding. So that seems to go quite well with the standard Buddhist position on the beginningless universe.
Well, I should say
나무 직종의 능신지기 다 사도 지셔베 디 능신 데 배지 고마르 섬기 다 남바다 레샤인 거봐. 저자 개발 냐마지기 직전 디기 차단디 디 롱저브 심진 그 레디 왕레 코리아지 중에나다로 맨다지. 다 직전 강 사바실에 인도산에 야 딜 롱저브 심진 디기 야 랜단기 디만나마다 용수도 가버렸어.
She's lost.
그런 가서 하는 유아다 변하지 감순구지도 순금주자지 시야인도산에 가는 전화 집에 가다 원부 장관으로 지셔야 되게 받아.
뭐뭐니 지도
그래. 그래서 하다. 장관님 시야 되도 와.
No.
요알보다.
네.
좋아. 왜 어쩌면 와. 저러다 대주 제대 코르코레 심지 소설 내왕기 코레 풍부디에 야 대다 뜸부지 또도 매매매 용도 비슷 와. 다 풍부디 강을 쬐세 신능 직전디에 매매매 용도 없어.
So,
디타임으로 sometimes.
so having said that, one thing that we need to bear in mind is that this idea in a repeated kind of dissolution and origination of the universe does not necessarily suggest that the same kind of universe will come into existence over and over again.
Same elements all that.
And also kind of
zero solar.
very elements as well.
No.
Yes. So you can envision a new universe with a whole set of new properties and elements that may not be the same as the one that existed before. And here, of course, from the Buddhist point of view, karma has a role to play, because the origin of the universe is tied to the kind of the karmic causation of beings who are going to futurely inhabit that universe in future. Yeah. So, for example, within the Buddhist text, there are discussions of different realms of existence, and within these different realms of existence, beings have different constitutions of existence, physical embodiments with different faculties. So there's this notion that, depending upon the environment in which one inhabits, there's going to be a difference in the physical constitution of the sentient beings. So similarly, one could imagine a world where it could be very different from the world that we inhabit. Universe.
So once again, if we understand this correctly, there is now not a mental causation, but there is a karmic factors which can influence a physical unfolding. Yeah. So again, there's the two levels of, we might say, causation. So I take it as we go back in time not only with the story that George told concerning the material universe, but we also go back in time concerning the consciousness part of the universe. And that these...
Tatiana, 그래서 조성해. dunde namsan lende ke di shekyu ayusam. Dunde duje she tadalolia. Chik semden semi tadalolia ko tudun debu denjunglo da chikse. 다 시즈 디 나라 난세기 꾸룽기 캬바드 데 타네 아니 두사부 두셔지가 다디 랜데스 랜데 좀 되셔야 돼.
So one thing that
we 리크즈지 랜데 준제가 리기도 와 리크즈지 랜데 준제도 드라마 버셔도 와 다디야 차 만들었음기 단여도 사오셔야 돼. 한 타지 터도디 랜드 타지 저 타지 제가 거기 주의지 탐지 제가 차서 센데요.
내주성이면 탐지지만 권내 계세요. So His Holiness was saying that we already had discussion about causation, and from the Buddhist point of view, when we speak of causation, it is important to bear in mind that we're not immediately meaning karmic causation right there.
Not immediately meaning
karmic causation.
Okay.
Because karmic causation is a subset of the general law of cause. So you can imagine the unfolding of natural process of causation in the natural world, which may have nothing to do with karma. But karmic causation only is relevant when there is a cause and effects kind of factors involved, where there is an intentional act of a sentient being, an act of a sentient being with an intention. Then that is related to the karmic causation. Now, how, at what level this kind of karmic causation intersects with a natural law of causality is a difficult point.
For example, in the formation phase of the universe, you mentioned there might be karmic factors.
Yeah, but at what stage and
how
specifically and so on. And then here His Holiness was saying that he would, the tradition's approach is that when it comes to the subtle workings of the karma, it's only the omniscient mind, detailed workings of the karma, it's only the omniscient mind of the Buddha that knows all.
I'd like to clear up
신도
on
고주 장도 되그러. 신도 고주 다 시험 어떻게 하지? 마음에 있는 남지 두고 가시면 돼. 그래서 남지 두야 돼. 다 신도 고주 지에 마요 지도 남지 두 소지 말배야. 시시 탐자로 견통해지. 저다고 가사 용어지 뭐 입에 머리 봐. 용어지 뭐 입에 가사 머리 봐. these 상황로 세나마도 시선이 싶어지 용도.
So, for example,
시도 고주다 그리니 우리.
so
저다한테 내가 디션이 되기. 낭배한테 슝 나라네. 자유는산에 자바 제하고 춘이르고. 능력에 다 와셔야 돼. 디테도 심심한 성기. 그렇지 딱 춘이를 샤샤지. 춘이르고. 다 대간에 뒤제 쉬시베나 그 교전 데뷔 아니 균제기 직자 균제 뒤때 등에 나와도 주로 때베 거래 저시베 거래 가 되더라 봐 균제도 가고 그래 저 주로 때 그래 균 저기 집에 저시베 말배
no.
매직 그거 지 주로다 다가다 가야 되면은 균 저기 깨야기 야 등로로 찍기 봐 다디 배진 것이 그지 셔인 거 봐. 다 되버리 것은 내가 늘 셔인 거다. 되버리 것은 자네 그 윤정 것이 계속 매체. 거라 디 캠베 들리고 어때야. 디 캠베 되고 어때야. 펜 튜냠로 텐스 찍찍다. 가자. 텐시죠 윤제사 소시다. 그 윤제 선임도 말이지. 이내다고 디 캠베 대슈긴태야. 디 캠베 대슈긴태야. 다 디가 아주 배가 케미컬도 되지. 그러니까 Z 누가 스테이드잖아요. 신테시스 제윤도 누가 태용도 와. 뒤때베지고 가는 용도. 제가 다 디디 개념으로 선택해서. 다 디디 실시하려 타라. 이제 태주고 다 디자 딩고 딩자 딩고. 그래서 그 태주고 건도세 그 실디 간도도 디디 직잖아. 다 하는 다 타도 내셔서 저거. 내셔서 말해. 춘이르고 와서 거기는 돈도 되지. 매사와 춘이르고 지단에도 써야 돼. 되게 개념으로 삼태했어. 판단으로 삼았어. 고대.
No.
어떻게 좀 그런 체크하지?
I forgot.
알로 뇽뇽 because 신도 고주.
신도 고주.
So one of the things that we have to remember is that from the Buddhist point of view, the facts includes not just evident facts, but also inferred facts, which could be not so evident, cannot be immediately observed, but we have to infer it on the basis of the observed phenomenon. Then there is a third level of facts which are recognized in Buddhism, referred to as the extremely hidden facts or concealed facts. And with this regard, it's only the omniscient mind that will be able to understand. And in some sense, so here, for ordinary people, the only avenue of knowledge is the testimony of a third person. So that becomes the only available source of understanding of that particular fact.
But the third person,
but then that also brings up the question of how do you accept the authority of that third person. You have to, it just cannot be any, evaluate the third person. So that brings up a whole host of questions. And one of the criteria used in evaluating the authority of that third person in the Buddhist context is, of course, we're talking about scriptural authority here, is to how far the scriptural descriptions are internally consistent. Now, with regard and how whether or not they contradict, confirmed realities, that have evidence.
통문주 때문에 잘 무슨 소리 나오면 중세 고주 때문에 살이야 지방은 나오면 다 시도 고주 때문에 살이 이지 지방은 나오면 자 다디 이지 지방 살이 가서 숨버디 숨는디 다 주미소 디 송셰베 답은 문주 담바다 지 고주 담바 디지털이야 따다베 라트야게 돼봐 디송어 붙이고 임바 그봐 다 신고 다른 하나도 신고 인 등에 내주 뒷담배 슝코랄레 내진 거 슝겨 다 드지기 두지기 타네 아다 롱다 차샤 이샤
So there is a very complex criteria of evaluating the authority of this third-person testimony. And for example, with regard to a particular scripture, when we evaluate it, it needs to be with respect to the first two levels of facts, the evident facts and the inferred facts. The statements should be logically inviolable. They should conform to our evidences and so on. And even with respect to the third level of facts, which is extremely concealed, first of all, the speaker should be someone who doesn't tell a lie. And furthermore, the statements that are made within that domain, which is the domain of the extremely hidden or concealed phenomena, it should be internally consistent. So there are all these criteria which are used to determine whether or not the testimony can be taken as valid. So, but His Holiness was saying that with respect to what is important is to appreciate the overall approach.
importance of the useful.
Now, what may be helpful in appreciating the Buddhist perspective here is to look at what in Buddhism we speak about 4 principles which provide an avenue of understanding the nature of reality. These are the principle of nature, and principle of dependence, and principle of function, and principle of evidence. So, and the first principle is really we get to the primary level of reality, where we get to a point where we simply say that's the way it is, and in other words, you do not that the chunyi that didn't pan then to so when you arrive, so when you get to that point now, which is the principle of nature, when your discourse has reached at that level, then basically, in a sense, it's the given. That's the way it is. You cannot go beyond that boundary. So His Holiness was saying that if he is forced to accept the objective randomness that Anton is talking about, then he will have to interpret it in terms of this, this nature principle of nature. Beyond explanation.
No need for sort of investigation. Okay.
So based upon this principle of nature,
right?
Then you have principle of dependence, where then the explanation has more to do with the interaction between the different elements. So here there's some parallel with the notion of chemistry, where you have new properties that emerge as a result of interaction of different, and one can see these as kind of simultaneous causation, but causation in a loose sense, one mutually reinforcing and complementing each other, so where there is a kind of an interrelationship. So
invisible, the subtle way effect.
So there might be kind of mutually kind of reinforcing effect even at the galaxy level.
Very subtle and
yeah, subtle. Yeah. And then the third principle is the principle of function, and here we're talking about law of causation, cause and effect, function in the sense of producing something.
So at the previous level, we're not speaking about the law of causation, just subtle influences that are not.
They are more like interconnections. Yeah, interconnections. And then based upon these three principles, then the principle of evidence comes, which is the use of logic, reason, because of A, B, and so on. So that takes into account the principle of nature, principle of dependence, and principle of function. So that may be helpful, as Holiness was saying.
I think Richie has a point of clarification he'd like to ask.
I just wanted to go back to the issue of karmic causation and the notion that intention is critical for karmic causation. I wonder, Your Holiness, if you can talk to us and help us understand what you mean by intention. That's something that's very important in the Western mind sciences and neuroscience, and I think it would be of great interest for us to learn more about the Buddhist understanding of the notion of intention.
굴루자래.
No. 다다 레줌 되게
네, 굴루자래.
굴lundan dewa yuba chik tohne ani mado chidan gyudan debu drim hares di chashieji 굴lung ke dewa legjum ling resumba desa 굴lung se de kechim shibu chagdos di nambengwen dadan jebena
다 안다 게 시에도 지단 시에다 다 레레 살아 마셔 잘 마셔 진짜 되는 거야. 약국시 잘 가르치 버보다. 안다 게 시에 돼야지 하나 가서 우리 변 신도 선지기 디 드부지야 돼. 그 윤적이 자치기 하는데 디 신도 선들이야 드부지에 자치가 사박하게 뭐 생각해 버보다. 그봐. 다 윤제 저한테가 어디 그러고. 이네 그 스미 인자네 그 사박하게 뭐. 당아도 레 신세대야디 레스도 차와라 봐. 차와서도 집어붙이기 제외다 그지도 와. 다도 두시합니다. 다음에 균 저기 자체는 실로를 자도 자주데. 안다 급도 그 시대야디 레스도 차와. 차와서 전에 집어붙이. 차지. 저전에 300 차월리고 하대. 심대지. 다들면.
so
다 이내 레고 나세 마셔야 되잖아요. 야, 살라만 셔 샬라만 사고 샤산 이거 참. 샤산 이거 뭐 용되고.
yes. The concept of karma is actually a very complex one. So His Holiness was saying that he was just making a very broad, generalized statement of karmic causation versus a natural, normal causation. So to take an example of, say, a growth of a tree from a seed, a fruit tree from a seed, that natural causation that is involved, the processes that are involved, on the part of the seed, there is no intention. So that process is kind of a natural process. But when we speak of karmic causation, karma generally, literally means an act. And act here presupposes an agent, a person who is committing the act. So therefore, intention of an agent already comes into the very understanding of the definition of the act itself.
So are all acts intentional?
어때요? 낭수이 어디야?
So, however, within the karmic action, there are different types of karma. You have some which are committed but not accrued. Then some which are accrued but not committed, intentionally committed. Some which are both.
And do these connect back, coming back to what George was describing, and you mentioned that there are these karmic factors or influences with regards to the formation of a new universe. If there are always agents, does that imply that there's always, even in the very early stages of the formation of the universe, that there is also agency?
다 디뇨들이 당연히 요를 대통을.
So this is the problem.
그래 중어 지려만 게임을 중거보다 그만 게임하고 그래年龄 쭉 가만가면 치면 도서만 게임한테 레자 아유나 삼. 좋아. 다진에 지금 패는 돼야게. 변한 안서 이 변한 랑 제로 소야게 륜디 두야게 두시 다 그래서 두제 처음 되다. 그러다 뒤용야게 다年龄 야야 토마도 지금 마사 공기. 뒤 참여급을 시행하나? 다다 내 류딩기 다 뒤제로 돼야 뒤 리균기 토메 뒤제되다. 사도를 다 차야게 뒤제니부터 집어서도 와. 다고 참 뒤내거를 그 패지다 내저세다 내가 루저마다 랜드게 자 아유나선 거다. 다진에 참진에 다디 남식이 땡칭에게 풍부 줄로 돼야 중을 봐. 다 디그도 되네 렉도 알리고도 상황이 거. 다야 디 중사를 제라 롱 접업을 심지 중사를 제라 심전이야 디두쟁 디두 가져다 디두 영향다 저차 대회 다 가소리 지 지구유디디에 다티야 렉도 알리고도 그러면 나가서 당제시 현재잖아요. 그래서 롱 접업을 심지 렉이 왕기 당제기 남주라면 현재가 그러다. 저전에 당제들이 차야고 렉이 제인 거야. 딱 그도 제려야 돼.
This is actually a very difficult question.
다음에 들은 아주 강바디 배주 제용이야래. 강바디 배주 조르 등에 지가래. 드리미드선에 배주 강바디 미야기 유조르 배주 게 렉셔인 기보다. 또 자서 이거 가지고 용되고 그러 봐. 산 디 강바디 두야 윤나는 자서 레지나 여러 요마래. 번구지용에 그저랑 레전하면은
So,
Yeah.
his-
아니 가서 그저 그저 수고를 시도 야면 시연의 시도를 래 캄보디 도야기 주나로 시도를 레전하면은 쪽스 롱시 당대 제도 와 말해 당대 제 말해
something.
어 그래对，就是龙脚不去，要不因啥龙姐姐女几点的差不多底线的，他去就去，到底来就忘记。到底年龄就是的，俺年龄就的，对头不晓得吧？过生命了吧？生命偏不了吧？到底，本来告诉我的。本来属性的缺陷不呢？或者人就了属性缺关的来嘛吧，嘛吧，是吧？设定我对不对？来嘛吧，是吧？但是吧，设定其他我这大家我们在那家生的来了嘛嘞，嘎，来嘛嘞，哦的，哦。
Shall we translate what this is just what all has transpired here?
well, His Holiness is. Let me first translate,
Translate
and
the
then,
first part,
yeah,
and then you can give us a sense of what the
discussions
dialogue
will
was
make
about.
sense.
Yeah. And then we also have to remember we have a tea break coming
yeah.
up, but we're at an important moment.
So His Holiness was saying that Arthur, your question is really takes us to the heart of the difficulty here, and the difficulty is, for example, if you take, this body, for example, from the point of view of the material continuum of this body, and if you trace it all the way back to the origin. The material factors
Before Big Bang.
Before Big Bang, yeah. The material factors that constitute the existence of this body and the material factors that constitute the existence of, say, a rock or mountain or something. There is no difference at all. So there is no difference at all. So it's simply a process that evolves and takes different forms. Now the question is, at what point does this process that is naturally evolving come to be affected by karma? So here His Holiness was saying that his own personal view is that at that point where the process has evolved where it can sustain a consciousness of a sentient, that's when karma has to come in. And then the karma involves from that point onwards. And once the sentient beings evolve in the natural world, then of course environment also has a karmic connection, because the environment has a direct effect upon the happiness and the suffering of the sentient beings who are inhabiting in this. And even in the Buddhist text, there is a notion of environmental effects of karma. And so that was the general point. And so His Holiness was saying that it's very difficult to pinpoint where the simple natural process of evolution intersects with the karmic causation. Then he was asking the question to the monks here, what do they think? And for example, like if they agree that so far as the material continuum of this unfolding is concerned, there is no karma. The process is natural and so on. Then what about when a visual perception arises? Okay, visual perception arises on the basis of the sense faculty. Would you say that is a karmic effect? And one of the monks said, no, that's part of this natural non-karmic causation. And then about the environmental effects of karma. For example, like today we are experiencing this room here and participating and enjoying the facilities here. So since His Holiness was saying this is part of his own residence, maybe he is the one who had made most of the karma for this. But since all of you are, in some sense, participating and using this facility, there has to be some karmic connection. Now, if we push that far, so he was asking the monks that, what about some of the monks, they may have body lice. The lice is also now in this room. Does the lice also have some karmic connection with this? So you can go, keep pushing.
So of course, if the karmic link there, when compatible to 차례 제대 배지 말바다 그들이다.
So even in the
딱
case of
compatible
this
두야 유리는 거는 상담을
house,
있나? 도마 개발 차가 그들네.
Even in the case of this
Very
house, this
ordinary.
environment.
yeah, so where does the karmic comes in? You know, is it after the house has already been built, or how do we take it to the causal stage? And if so, how far are we going to take it? You know, all the way up to the
Right.
beginning.
Well, I think one of the most important places where karma can happen is during a tea break. And we are, in fact, at
That's a
that
good job.
This is a fruit of a
Definitely.
positive karma.
positive karma, but we would like to bring you much positive karma. So, in as much as we are in your house and home, we thank you for that, and we also thank you for the tea that we're about to enjoy. So we'll come back in about 15 minutes, if that's all right. So by by this clock, please.
That is a Sotrantika law school position. Forget that.
So rubbish.
Thank you. I think we're all reassembled
Yeah, I really find that.
for the last part of the session this afternoon.
Sanskrit na nambe zao chong.
I'm sorry all of you weren't part of the tea break here because the conversation concerning the origins of the universe and karmic factors was indeed completely clarified and solved. But the tape recorders were off, so I'm afraid it's lost forever.
Unobserved.
Unobserved phenomena.
Unobserved insight is not an insight.
Yeah. We'd like to continue the conversation, and perhaps some elements of our tea break conversation that might naturally find a way into the discussion that we continue this afternoon. But we'd like to first ask Mathieu to say just a word or two in direct response to something George Greenstein brought up concerning space and time and whether these began with the Big Bang, when there was no matter, no energy. Did space and time exist?
Yeah, I just forgot to mention the position, the Buddhist position about laws, time, and space. Basically, as being relative phenomena, belonging to the phenomenal world of cause and effect, of instant events and impermanence, and not existing on their own besides phenomena. The argument being there that if they were existing somehow out there without phenomena or the changing transformation of phenomena, that would require that they exist autonomously, independently as immanent entities, and almost like Platonician ideas or universals. And the critics of that is that they were independently existing, whether it's mathematics, physical law, time.
You're broadcasting.
Or space, that will, if they had an independent, autonomous existence.
They being, I'm sorry, space and time. You're talking about.
Yes.
Yes, all of those,
Okay.
including, for instance, mathematics or
Yes,
law of physics. That means they will have an autonomous existence independently of phenomena. And that the logical conclusion that is absurd would be that therefore they could not relate in any way to changing phenomena that has to do with cause and effect. They are being autonomous and therefore permanent and immanent or existing outside phenomena. We have no way of relating to a conditioned world, conditioned by cause and effect, by impermanence, by being interdependent, and so forth.
Again, causality requires change, and permanent things
dependence.
can't change.
And mutual
Permanent
dependence.
things can't change.
And mutual causation and dependence. So in a way, they are intimately linked to the very fabric of impermanence, causation, where time is the link to the transformation of phenomena, space, or the spatial dimension in which they sort of occur. Laws are the laws that that are connected with the causation and the independent arising and so forth. Mathematics what describe the transformation of phenomena, but they will not exist as independent ideas or entities outside phenomena. That's the Buddhist position, I think.
So do I understand you to mean that anything that is autonomously existing in and of itself cannot affect anything else?
Cannot be affected, cannot affect, it just doesn't exist for us.
Sort of exists in its own little universe all by itself.
Well,
Sort of. So it's
very,
irrelevant.
very often such things are considered to not be truly existent, they're only conceptually existent. So for example, time will not be thought to be actually a real thing in the world, but rather a conceptual construct, and not a real thing in the world.
How about a number?
Now, there will be Buddhist systems in which time does exist.
Numbers.
There will be Buddhist systems in which time does take into exist in fact or substantially, but in the higher philosophies, time is not real.
For example, from the Buddhist point of view, time would be contingent upon temporal phenomena, whether it is physical or mental. And independent of the temporal phenomena, the concept of time doesn't really make any sense.
But we should then be clear, you say either physical or mental, all right? So since the mental stream goes all the way back through the earliest formation and even beyond, since there is no beginning, there are mental phenomena that are always available. So they're always mental change. Therefore, time would always exist, even
as a conceptual construct.
Pardon me? Relative to those phenomena.
But never forget, and when we speak of existence,
however, the time is a construct of a temporal continuum. So, and then independent of the temporal phenomena upon which it is constructed, you cannot conceive of time as an independent kind of entity.
So, as I understand it, then time doesn't, quote, have a beginning, but it is codependent on the temporal phenomena that it is emergent from, or something of that sort, right? Wolf, I'm sorry.
I think I should clarify something here. Maybe we just sort of drop down into a simpler level of explanation. So, for example, the concept of a glass, all right? We'll drop down to a lower level of explanation. These are all called a glass. Why are they all called a glass? Well, a sort of Platonic approach would be that they all instantiate a universal-like glassness. And that would be a position that would be taken by a non-Buddhist school in Indian philosophy like the Nyayayikas. And the Buddhist response would be, and glassness for the Nyayayika school would be a real thing. Okay? But for Chiyangawa. So, but for Buddhists, talking especially at all levels of Buddhism, there is no such thing as glassness. It's something we construct conceptually in order to use language, but there is no glasses. There's only individuals, which are actually all unique. We make up this sameness for the particulars. Likewise, time is conceptually constructed. So it doesn't exist in the way that glasses exist. It's a product of our conceptual construction. Okay, that's, I think, a key point here.
But the glassness is a product of our conceptual construction also.
Yeah.
Glassness is a product
glassness,
of
glassness, time, things that generally are distributed over many things are understood to be conceptually constructed.
Wolf?
This is an observer's comment. It seems to me that of what we have heard today about the different approaches to reality, that our different cultures certainly share the categories of space and time because they are the issue of our primary perception. We perceive the world as such. We perceive a world of classical physics. And I think mankind so far has exhausted the possibilities by mere reflection of dealing with those categories. Because some of the things I have heard about the Buddhist position sound familiar to me. It's in the Greek philosophy, in the Stoa, for example. You find a lot of this. Has been thought already. So, and now we have the problem that these physicists people, without providing final answers, raising more questions than they actually solve. Because they go against our primary primary experience of the way in which we perceive the world. They produce very counterintuitive conclusions, questioning the validity of these classically believed canonical categories of space and time, and I don't know which else. There may be a few more of those. So maybe we have to abandon those concepts. Wouldn't that be a solution? Well, it's not a solution, but we may have to abandon them, which will put us into a very strange world, because this world will no longer be intuitively graspable. And the question is, how do we feel in a world in which we play with categories which are intuitively no longer plausible in everyday life?
We're already in that world.
Yeah, some of us, others not. I mean, you have the privilege of being in this strange world at home. But
So what's your question? What is it like? It's like what it is to be me. That's what it's like. And it's not very different.
no, the question is not whether we have a collective problem that is not a specific problem between Buddhist culture and Western culture, but it's a problem that we all deal with categories that we have derived from intuition and primary experience. And in this respect, we resemble each other. There are different positions, but they have all been exhausted, more or less. And now we see that these primary categories may not be valid. And this puts us in the same trouble. We row in the same boat. So that was the point.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
딘디지 땅든 최 권에 모델이 샤프야 편해야 됩니다. 그래서 땅 가르스는 땅든 자오마 자니 가서 오다 모조마 뭐 그 마다 마셔병안에 낭섬 딩안에 줘야지. 딘 줘야지 되게 하다가 그 소리시 르왕기 샤과래 르왕 마셔고 쉬어 말지 르 강샤 유미 그서. 디여치야지. 르왕기 유버래 르왕기 유스 르 가서다 르 땅살로디 야 예고 말이지 들었나 야 민요바로 얘기 남한테 잘 챙겨보다 저디 이니처는 거 그래 용마로 따고 지도산에 따고 르 지장 다 된지 여도 메시아디 트네 예미자니 가서 예미 타져 돼야 매체 따고라 마다 마셔병 안에 지대는 차ความ다 나와 녀야관에 차과임 죄송아 다 차과 대상시 녀버지 그 령올레 즉 차대어로다 그 준하 대왕기 또 준하서로 그 닝주로 대왕기 그런 영어 용식이다 그봐 그래서 디 딩메 인도산에 타녀베 로신지 민으로지 거리스 그래서 다 너무 미직 때 인도산에 따뜻들이잖아요 그 잡혀야 되지 다 너무 미직이 잡혀 여봐 상기 미쳐봐 딩오디 전담 딩오디 코라 속도를 가네 샤베 이나 무슨 로봇이 그 속도 신는 게 유비는 속도 어디 배지 로봇이 무슨 식으로 봐 이제 다 대야 전담 주식이 그 내용 있잖아요 대야 인적 말이지 근데 얘들 다 타녀도 차고 있봐 다른 타녀에 서머시 민어봐 대저도 마세베 전담 주식이 식시냐 민어지 다티 이 예배 세리스 다리 공원랜드
So this really raises a very critical point, and here probably the Prasangika's perspective may be helpful, because the challenge being raised is how can we maintain a notion of reality, that is efficacious, that is workable, that is efficacious, and that doesn't lead us to this kind of extreme, while not positing some kind of essence-independent reality out there. So where the tension is coming from is often when we are trying to define something, when we are trying to find the nature of something through a process of inquiry. Often this process is really led by a quest or some kind of assumption that we should be findable, something that can be objectively grounded. So you keep
quantum setting 낭배에다 다가 우마베 다가 찍버려 써야 돼. 지수는 타냐리야. 건저디 그도 동니 주구야 쓰가 말때 이내 낭점 대 무슨 주도 와.
So
제
here,
정신남 정생 모두 컨디션도 제인 거. 딱고 당도 자가 주고 낭점 대 무슨 봐.
so here there seems to be a kind of a certain parallel between the process of analysis that you find in the Madhyamaka deconstruction or kind of deconstructive analysis of a concept, and then the kind of analysis you find in the quantum level, where you're really kind of going at a very deep level. Although the quantum physicists may not use the language of the logic of emptiness, but seems to be pointing towards the same. And that similarity is you are going beyond the boundary of kind of sensibility of language and concepts. And you're not staying within the domain and at the level of experience, mere experience and mere phenomenal appearance or experience of the individual. You're going beyond the boundary of that. And when you search for something by going beyond that boundary, and basically the assumption is that you're looking for something that is objectively groundable. So when you proceed in this manner, the end result is nothing is found, because nothing can be findable in this way. So then the question is, how do we then make sense of the reality? How can we, in some sense, create a notion of reality that is efficacious? That can, on the basis of which we can accord our law of causality, all the functions that we all agree, and so on.
The existence.
So in other words, reality, the existence. So here the Prasangika's suggestion has been to say that criteria has to be not objective. That criteria has to come purely from the subjective perspective. So here the role of observer and observation comes into the picture. And so what would be that subjective criteria? The first one, that observation or observer would be, it could be a person's experience. It could be a shared convention and language. What else would be? Shared language, convention, experience, and
that's commonly accepted.
Commonly accepted. So
something in terms of phenomenal appearance, or in terms of what is, or a convention that is commonly accepted.
Yeah, convention that is based upon common experience and also shared in language. So that would be the first criteria. But here, of course, if we just simply say a personal experience, then you can have all sorts of crazy people saying, "Well, I'm going to call this, I would say this exists because I feel it, I see it." So how do you counter that? So you have the second criteria, which is that this. So, sorry, we have to step back. So there is therefore we cannot speak of reality independent of an observation by a subjective experience. However, that doesn't mean that anything goes so long as you mentally want to designate. So you have, how do you keep the middle way between a subjective criteria, but that also doesn't slide into anything goes. So here, you need the second criteria, which is that it has to be a convention that is not only affirmed,
or phenomenal
appearance that is not only shared, but also something that does not contradict another valid
conventional cognition.
Conventional cognition, actually, another valid. So
like third person, or even one person, different time.
Subsequent realization. So that this way, someone's egocentric kind of conventions can be negated. But even here, we need a third criteria, because we may all share a convention and a belief in some kind of objective independent existence. So then we can all mutually reinforce each other's perception, but that doesn't really accord with reality. So here the third criteria is that convention should not be also contradicted by an inquiry into the ultimate nature of reality. Because when you presuppose intrinsic existence, objective intrinsic existence, that can be contradicted by an inquiry into the ultimate nature of things, which is basically emptiness.
다만 대야도 뒤퇴야도 들으시 아다 남배숑 가시 다 남배숑 가다 유중원의 두구리 세네 유중원의 두고 시샤청에 뒤되기 다 나서 자인도 자네 에네 즉 생시기 남시 양나 다 가서 후봉하자 다 냠차어를 다 차어를 생시기 남시 양 거리 우도 자네 남시 개바 근신 남시 진짜 셰고도 디 근신 남시에서 셰인도 자네 그 탄협의 주시기 얼마도 단답방어도 전다 코랑코랑 루고 단답방어도 저도 말이디 이내 코랑기 디 샤윤도 ummebetuk stebe ina takdun zeni niebe lus cheni shaba yin zane tera tanoji be noy do so
So
da gunshi 강사를 샤샤들라 탄이 주주비 하람다 너무 돼서 봐 미샤 조주는 뒤서 강신 샤샤로 다 tanoji be noy do 자 이제 대다게 takdun zeni niebe lus cheni 샤샤버디 탄이도 야 말이지 tanoji be noy do 탄탄이도 야마서 올라다 가서 왔다
So, for example, within the Buddhist context, there are debates between the various schools, and from the Prasangika's point of view, some of the postulations of the lower Buddhist, other Buddhist schools are grounded upon this assumption of objective findability of things. And, for example, when you ask what is the true nature of the person, what is the referent of the first person term, I, then other Buddhist schools, some of them who are motivated by this assumption of, findability, something that is groundable in objective reality, would say, well, it is the totality of the mind-body complex. Or someone may say it is the mental consciousness. And then some school even postulate the idea of a completely different stream of consciousness called the foundational consciousness or store consciousness. And so, although from their point of view, these may be taken as conventional realities, but from the Prasangika's point of view, the postulations of these ideas are motivated by an assumption that person must be foundable objectively. Therefore, from Prasangika's point of view, they have stepped beyond the boundary of this, convention and language. Therefore, that these postulations can be negated by inquiry into the ultimate nature of things.
Even though they wouldn't be negated by others sharing the same convention. So if a bunch of persons who share this convention of the eighth consciousness, that there's a foundational consciousness, if they get together and talk about it, they'll say, I don't know, sure, there's the eighth consciousness. It's not going to be something that will be negated by conventional cognition, but it would be negated by cognition analytic of the ultimate.
No.
And let me just clarify that
So this presents the criteria of what could be accepted as conventional reality, what exists.
Can I just make one comment? And there's a very interesting term that comes up here in Tibetan, which is matsimba, not being satisfied. We're not satisfied with just going with what appears to us phenomenally or what is in terms of our experience. We think there must be something more there. And when we go for the something more, that's when we're looking for this objective reality. So it's being satisfied with the conventional and with phenomenal appearance and with experience that allows us to remain at the level of the conventional. And if we stop being satisfied by that, we need something more, that's when we head toward the ultimate and toward essentialization, toward objectivity.
Evan, would you like to make a comment?
Yes, I'd like to pursue the discussion of the status of the conceptual constructs, particularly with regard to the example of space. It seems to me that it's not sufficient to say that space is a conceptual construct. That's true, but we need to go deeper, and we need to ask, how does that construct arise and come to be in our experience? And it seems to me that what's crucial there is that we are embodied beings. We have certain kinds of bodies. So I experience things as up and down and back and front and left and right because I have a certain body with a certain symmetry that makes me inhabit space with an egocentric structure. But I'm also a social being, and I can cognitively adopt your perspective and mentally imagine how things look from your perspective. When I do that, I transpose my egocentric perspective over to yours. And a further development of that then is the realization that there are many possible egocentric perspectives. And so space has to contain all of those different possibilities. When we make that further step, then space is no longer my perspective or your perspective. It has to be this further medium that contains these perspectives, all of which, though, in terms of experience, go back to my egocentric space. Now, we know also in biology that the brain codes space egocentrically, also codes it non-egocentrically. So there's a biological basis for this. So we can give a phenomenological story or account of how the construct emerges out of our experience from the first-person perspective of our bodies. But then we can also relate it to the biology that we have, to the way that our brains work, and to our evolutionary history. And when we do that, I think we go to a deeper level of account of where these constructs come from. And this was what I was trying to get at earlier this morning when I raised the question about where do these constructs like space, time, and so on, where do they come from? To answer that question, we need this kind of developmental, phenomenological, and biological account.
뒤에서 따요 들어와서 따요
그 뒤에 스페이스라다.
난 남거든 뒤에 집으로 배는 고난 셈을 걸어 따요 인단지 따요 이부터 때 버리셨어 그냥 따요 간데스 자고 여부터 제가 제배는 다처리 손손 레절랑규면 로스 그래서는 바이올로지 고난 돈에 아니 레베 돈에 아니 지 스페이스 간데스 수고유메디 로스 시에 요래서 간데스 수부주 여배 왕기 듄다 잡다 예도 윤스케 셰크 셰토 걸어 다디 미 간사 제라바지 수수용문에 다 쇼기 뒤기 또 가산 나 간다 고사스 말다 스페이스 랩도 나디
다人也是预下去
라니 의르샤 다 간다 초 스페이스 랩도 초디 간사 제라바지기 문에 때베기 다 다여와 또 이래대이네야 간사 제라바디기 미신다지 따당기 디 뢰쥐도 그러봤어 왜냐면 미신다지 뭐네 수대변에 가르스타는 나선지 둘려줘 두고 요인자 아니 디 초세에 미 간사 쳐다봐 찍장냥 다시 보지 멤버스다 투몽 투나요 버지 루도지 샤투도스 그래서 두두두데 내가 체력도는 줄래서 랑베나 냐 다요레 세바 잠마인 바 다요 딱딱 가르스타고 여버들이야 대해서 축도로 왔어.
Are you in basic agreement with this comment? Do you want to make any statements or?
And the whole universe centered, so sort of I.
It is true because, in fact, this egocentrism is even one could say that the center of the whole universe is actually oneself.
East, west, that's all just. In center, center.
So when we speak of east, west, and so on, it's always from the perspective of the person, and you become the center.
Although I think you could also ask whether there is, in this explanation, whether you're no longer being satisfied, whether you're matsimba here, and you're really looking for some kind of objectivity, or instead you're just looking for a richer explanation of your phenomenal experience. So if it's a richer explanation of your phenomenal experience, then it's just a kind of way of us understanding our conventional reality more clearly. If it's really a kind of covert search for objectivity, then it's going to end in the same set of problems.
Can I just quickly respond to that?
I think we have the physics side of this, philosophy. Go ahead.
Well, I would just say that from the perspective that I articulated, we would want to be able to account for how it is that we come to have a concept of objectivity that may mislead us, but nonetheless, we have this concept. Where does it come from? It comes out of this intersubjective framework. That would be the point I would want to make.
We should say that space and time, or nowadays these are brought together in a single concept of space-time, again analyzed through experiment, not conceptually in the way we've been talking philosophically, but simply out of the necessities of experiment. That the concepts we have conventionally had proved to be insufficient, and we've had to modify them. So this idea of just convention, just be satisfied with what you have, hasn't worked out.
다 토리 가서 스페이스 시고 말안 돼.
말해 가서 말해. 아주 스페셜럽도 돌아가서 자는 말해. 간다 지 초, 세르지를 한다. 초라고 지라.
초도 그래. 뒤지려 그래.
뒤지샤고.
초 뒤지려 그래. 가. 뒤지려.
뒤지샤고. 나. 다 바나 세르지를 간다 지 가 수진 고 가서 줘 봐. 고사세들. 뒤지라샤고 있어.
Anton would just like to make a brief comment.
Just to continue what you just said, this this new notion of space-time, of a unity of space and time, is something which I think is a beautiful example of a successful new concept developed by physics, which did not exist before. I'm not sure whether any tradition, the ancient Greeks certainly didn't have it. I don't know whether any other tradition did have this concept of a unity, which was basically developed by relativity theory. It is extremely successful. So I agree with what Wolf said, that we should give up these old concepts, these old notions, but we are on the way. We invent some new notions which really work. We have some new notions in relativity theory. We have, like the picture I gave you of quantum mechanics was intentionally to point at the open questions, because this is why I came here. I could talk for a week and you would not even realize that there are open questions about quantum mechanics. I could talk for a week, tell you the success and how precise everything is and how well it works. So the situation is not as bad as it sometimes sounds.
I think Wolf would like to...
A very brief example, just showing that this is nothing new. We have been thinking that the sun is the center of, is not the center of our solar system, but that it circles around the Earth. We still perceive it as such, and when we write love letters and emotional stuff, we always say that the sun rises here and it walks and then settles down. At the same time, we know that this is wrong. We live in parallel worlds, and we do this wonderfully, and we use the different descriptions of the world for different purposes. If we want to have a satellite fly successfully, we would be very, very poor if we did it, if we had this model. And so we will have different models for different purposes. And there will be nothing that will take us away our primary perceptions and the force they have, because they are the only ones that give us the immediate evidence that something is true. And I can give you examples tomorrow how strong these preconceptions are, against which you cannot fight. Even if you know it otherwise, you will perceive it as God or who else made us, nature.
Well, concerning this sunrise or sunset, that you see the sun rising, I actually... Personally, I worked on this, and now when I see the sunset, I really have the feeling that I'm on a rotating sphere. And the sphere rotates such that the sun comes out of sight. It took some training, but it is now the experience I have when I see a sunset or a sunrise. So you can modify it. I can tell you because my wife is here.
Your Holiness, I'd like to bring our attention in some sense away from our love letters. We have a monastic community here. We have to remember to respect, and they have their vows after all. But coming back to this question of the phenomenal domain, I'd like to make sure one thing is clarified. We've been talking a lot about the sense phenomenal domain, the phenomena of the senses, the glasses, the sunrise, the sunset. But of course, within your tradition, there is also a meditative tradition in which there is also, you could say, other phenomenal domains. Do you apply the same analysis to that level of reality as we do to the sense-based level of reality? Do the same conditions that you mentioned, for example, for their validity, have to be proven to be the case? A consensual agreement, ultimate analysis, and so forth.
맞아, 너무 동은 영화 유 시에 갑자기 나는 망제 진 왕시 양양 때문에 주전자냐 거부로 봤어. 되는 나주 나려야지 무슨이야 왕부냐냐마 왕시 양양마 임바 또다지 내주 무슨다 근데 레기요 엔자스 다 진주니에 들려야 단단하시기 다니베 쉐벌 잡아다. 아니 다니베 쉐벌 참신지 면허바 쉐벌신지 면허바다. 아니 전화 주지 참여냐 면허바. 리버스가 자축으로 했어.
시버코를 유미해.
말해. 시버대 유드. 또 하나 저는 무슨 게 유드 간다 시에베나. 다들 유드 매래야. 지 디 시버를 잡아다. 전남 주지 거산 다니면 참신지 면허바다. 전남 주지를 시지 면허바스.
다 되게 영화 사이드가 루스.
루스.
맞지다면 용자진 차면이야.
그래.
야, 지코는 영화관에 다 차들이지.
그래.
저 맨로
루스. 루샤.
아,
당연하죠.
타냐도 차바 세야들이야. 지금 배지 나와 영화관에 다 벗으면 되게. 두개. 두아. 어디 뒤 가래 돼. 나와 영화 니 셔야 가래.
자.
근데 사람도 또 그래서 그러던데. 영화를 시작이 연나 맨날 sab근데 자주 연나. 안 보고 듣지 말아야 돼.
그래. 단단한다. 코란들 샤다 뒤녀들이야. 왕시의 녀들다. 다 근데 지금 무슨
또 보이니들.
또 말해.
내정 무슨
민담 담아서.
내정도 가오래. 시다송도 시작으로.
단 간다 지 냠렘바 내정 무슨 마샤비네. 다지 간도 검거토네. 영화 계지. 근데 다 녀들들 좋아.
누가로?
Same would apply.
그냥 영화로 지 캔사람들 주문이나 다디 다니면서 하시는 사람들 상당히 별로 안 하고.
And the same with regards to conceptual designation in that domain. We have talked about conceptual designation of these glasses.
Yeah, it'll be the same.
Be the same.
리포숨디 다니면 시발을 잡아다, 영암 잡아다, 신지면 해봐다, 제마신지 전도지를 신지면 해봤을 때 유죄 담자를.
그래.
This applies across
all levels of experience.
This is really the criteria by which we judge whether something can be said to exist or not. So that applies across everything.
Thank you. I think that's important. One last issue, which I think comes back to something that Jimpa mentioned at the outset, namely that the entire orientation of Buddhism is towards this ethical direction. Now, we've been talking quite abstractly, quite conceptually, quite philosophically about existence and the early universe and all of this. In what way does this serve the relief of suffering of sentient beings?
That's easy. But 독진시에 있는 자네, 아니 신뢰지 직된다, 난주지, 다 신뢰지 독된다, 난주지 다 독된시네. 다 소소데 난주지 직된. 소시한 거로. 이네다 디샤이르서네 디샬라, 아니 신뢰지 직된디 레고도. 다그 대답되니 다 지금 가서 그래. 그 분구로 더 든 거를 모두 셰 달링시인데 저지 다 돼야지 이렇게 셰인 거로 다 되리. 저다 가다 신업은 내주 세디 셰이르잖아요. 그 태가를 지 꼼자지 저 연애면에 거를 시 내주지 딴을 펴니. 시 내주 진짜 뭐 인상? 아니 대 주주단 배주 지기나 any possibility 띄웅그리 셰네. 다 람빈스 셰고.
The basic the basic motivation is really this ethical motivation to seek elevation of suffering.
I think in other words, I think nobody wants suffering, or I think another way, nobody wants enemy. I think nobody from early morning thinking, oh, today I want to create one enemy. I think nobody thinks that. Isn't it? No? But meantime, from early morning, oh, today, I wish I will find some good friend. So now, ultimately, whether you find good friend or enemy is not dependent on external, but your own attitude. Clear? So now the question is, what inner element creates enemy? Anger, hatred, jealousy, so on. Usually we call destructive emotion. The inner element which bring genuine friend is respect, love, compassion, sense of concern. So now the thinking, yes, I want good friend. I do not want any single enemy. Even those enemy, I do not want to eventually forget, right? Or to change. So the finger point now, I must change. I remain always anger, shouting, fighting, then endless enemy will come. Isn't it? So now how to change the negative emotion or destructive emotion or positive emotion or constructive emotion. Now here we have to know the reality. Emotion, unless it's a contradictory emotion, two emotions there, no possibility to change. So change will not come through prayer. Change through effort. How? Knowing the reality and nature, contradictory, opposing each other.
Opposing forces.
And it is causes. Knowing that, then there is possibility to develop enthusiasm or hope or vision, enthusiasm, then determination, effort. So then gradually change our mental attitude. So that's the Lam.
So that takes us to the actual path, the gradual levels of the path.
So in order to construct the path, the reality, we have to know.
So the understanding of reality is part of that overall project of how to know to change. And the change demands the understanding of the actual workings of reality. And then earlier His Holiness was saying that while the emphasis is on understanding the nature of reality of the inner world, but because the inner world is connected with the outer world, so the Buddhist inquiry into the nature of the origin of the universe, they are ultimately tied to this project of seeking liberation and elevation of suffering. So on specific points, you may not see the direct connection, but they are ultimately connected to this ethical motivation.
I think if there are ignorance, the destructive, I think the chinjalog maributi.
Now, distorted views, and particularly the ignorance.
If in order to remove that, it is necessary to know the quantum physics, then Buddha must taught that. But since you see the real the counter force of the grasping wrong view is the wisdom or understand about the ultimate reality. That's absence of independent existence. So Buddha taught shunya or emptiness. So like that. Of course, there's a Buddhist viewpoint. May not be 100% correct.
Your Holiness, I think we've come to the end of the afternoon session. We want to thank you especially also for this last contribution, which brings us, you might say, to the real purpose that we're here, working among many friends, I think, together for the kind of insight into the nature of reality that will indeed serve to relieve the suffering of all sentient beings. Thank you very much.
No, they, no.